Welcome to Town Meeting Television, ongoing election coverage. This is one of many forums we're bringing you in advance of Town Meeting 2021. You will be able to vote March 2nd of 2021, and actually earlier than that if you request your ballot from your town or village clerk. Well, in this case, it's just that the town that's voting. Is that right, on March 2nd, Evan and Pat?
No, actually, both are voting.
Okay, great.
Yep, and I think we have authorized the sending of ballots to all active voters. So starting next week, I believe people should start looking for those in the mail.
So the town meeting TV forums are designed to introduce you to community decision makers such as Evan Teach, who's here with us, the unified manager for the Village of Essex and the Town of Essex, and Patrick Murray, who's on the Essex Select Board. If you're watching this live, we welcome your calls at 802-862-3966. Patrick Murray, I think I'll turn it over to you. You're presenting the budget, the FY22 budget, is that correct? And any ballot items that we may see, or at least just a summary of the ballot items that are on
just the budget. I believe we've had a presentation that we spoke about our other ballot item earlier in January. Thank you so much, Megan, for having us and Town Meeting TV, all the people working to get this out to the community. My name is Pat Murray. I'm the vice chair of the Essex Select Board. Typically, this is a job that falls to our chair to do, but this year she is running for re-election. So in those years, it's the vice chair's job to present this budget online and to Town Meeting TV. I think the easiest way to do it is just to get started. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Please let me know if at any point it stops sharing or doesn't come through. And are you all seeing that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so Town of Essex, our FY 2022 proposed operating budget. Now, we're going to begin the story of our budget talking about the consolidated services and alignments that we have done over the last several years. Specifically, this is in regards to functions that can be connected between both the town and the village of Essex Junction. This includes, over the last several years, the police services themselves have always been something that the two communities have shared in. But we do have a senior busing. 3 years ago, we hired Evan as our unified manager. So he does manage both the town of Essex and the village of Essex Junction, which is a significant savings rather than hiring two separate individuals for those jobs. And over the years, these consolidated services and various alignments have also included tax billing and collecting services, our stormwater, finance and administrative departments, the highway, our IT departments, public works administration, paving. Our clerk is now services both the town and the village of Essex Junction, and our HR department also does the same task. More recently, we were able to, while they have not fully aligned, the fire departments themselves have had their pay scales matched so that both departments are making the same amount of money, participating in the same types of training. Finally, we have also tried to bring in line the recreation departments a little bit more closely than they have worked in the past. They are now co-located at the same facility, which previous to this, when they were located in different places in Essex and Essex Junction, we would have some residents who weren't always sure where they needed to go to get a park pass or to sign up for a program. Now we have all of that in one place at Maple Street Park in Essex Junction. Now, those are just a list of the most recent services that we've brought into alignment and are consolidated. There are a number of other services that we do share. Our wastewater treatment plant is owned by the Village of Essex Junction, but it is utilized by both Town of Essex, Essex Junction, and also the Town of Williston. Our Essex Rescue and Ambulance Services and our GMT Transit Services, as well as the Chittenden County Regional Planning Services, are all different functions that we have aligned and contributed with both of the communities. Health insurance is one that is provided by overall rather than having two separate programs. We've also more recently brought in line our buildings and property maintenance under one specific individual that we've brought on to oversee the maintenance of our facilities within both the town and Essex Junction, and our economic development services as well. Now, the savings that we've so far achieved through consolidation. From the fiscal year 2014 to the fiscal year 2022, we're estimating at a $3.42 million saved. This includes, savings both in the town and the village itself. Having one unified manager, as an example, save the town $501,700. The village $734,000. Finance and administration, as you can see, town and the village also achieving significant savings by not needing to replicate those services in the two communities. This continues with public works, and our total savings, as you can see below, 3.42 million. Now, while we don't anticipate at this moment bringing on any new consolidation services, we're in the middle of merger question that's being placed onto the ballot on town meeting day. So no new departments have been consolidated, but we do expect the continuation of all of these existing services to go forward into FY22. For FY22 specifically, once again, we're looking at just one single year of those consolidated savings broken down between the manager, our finance department, the administrative staff, our assistant to the manager, and estimated costs between stormwater and highway. Other administrative departments that do see some savings, though they may be smaller, it's worth including on here, tax processing and in our IT department as well. This brings us to a total in the town of Essex at $333,022, and in the village, $383,706. So without these savings, when we include these, all we expect is that our estimated tax rate would be 1.23 cents higher, and the total budget would be about 2.09% higher than it actually is. So the savings themselves on a year-to-year basis are pretty significant. 1.23 cent change in the tax rate on what we term is the average home is a roughly $280,000 assessed value home is roughly $34. Going into fiscal year 22, these in particular are some budget objectives that we look at. We want to ensure continued delivery of the quality services that we presently provide. It's very important to us as the second largest community in Vermont to attract and retain quality talent in every single one of our departments. We want to attempt to improve our economic development efforts. In particular, we know in the time of COVID that being able to reach out and maintain better business resources and relationships within our community is something that's critical to the residents that live and work here in Essex. We're also focusing on savings in anticipation of our future capital expenses looking down the road. We believe in good financial management, not just year to year, but also extending out into the future, making sure that we're never hopefully hit with a situation where we need to spend a large amount of money in one year to replace a number of very expensive items. So vehicles and equipment, our road maintenance, building upkeep, and our stormwater improvements are all something that we plan out a number of years into the future. And then finally, minimize the impact on our tax rate. We know that during COVID, this is a difficult time for a lot of people. Last year, our municipal manager, Evan, suggested and the board approved a flat tax rate for the town to help keep costs down for any residents who needed to pay, because we knew it was a difficult time of year, or excuse me, a difficult year for everyone. We also know that this is likely to continue into the next year. So it's something that we keep in mind when we're crafting the 22 budget. In fiscal year 22, we have several new and enhanced programs. We've added funding for police body cameras and the associated software for that. This is part of important push for us to ensure that all of our residents feel safe in our community. We've added 2 new positions, one half-time and one full-time. The half-time position is related to economic development, as I mentioned earlier, keeping in touch with the businesses that we have in Essex, ensuring that we can be responsive to them and their needs, particularly in the times that we find ourselves in. We also approved a full-time assistant manager to help with the staff. Again, difficulty of having everything remote and needing to manage 2 communities as our staff does can sometimes leave them in a situation where we have a lot of work that needs to be done and not always enough time to do it in. So part of this was a select board initiative to make sure that our staff was properly supported going into the new year. This also includes the inclusion of the village highway rolling stock costs and the elimination of something called the town highway tax. Now, I'll talk a little bit more in detail about the town highway tax, but Evan, if you wouldn't mind explaining what the village highway rolling stock actually means and why now we're choosing to sort of fold it in.
Sure. Thank you, Pat. The term rolling stock is really just a fancy name for vehicles and equipment. If you can imagine, each community has plow trucks. You all seen them over the last several days, plenty. But things like plow trucks, street sweeper, the Vector truck, pickup trucks, and plows. Those are rolling stock. As you mentioned, the town highway tax. And so already the village's highway budget is in the town budget. This was the last piece that needed to be moved over. And because of the elimination of the town highway tax at the same time, the tax impact is much less, and they sort of play off of each other.
Great. Awesome. Thanks so much, Evan. We've also spoken and worked on funding for racial equity and inclusion work. We have a large group of citizens that were interested in this, an initiative that our manager, Evan, spearheaded, in point of fact, and that work is ongoing even now. We want to make sure that we're going to continue to be robust and responsive when it comes to racial equity and racial justice. So something that we want to make sure is funded in the budget for the upcoming year. part of that as well is, when we were talking, is the funding to pay stipends to all of our volunteer board and committee members. We know that as a municipality, it's sometimes very difficult for us to attract people who are really representative of the community. Through no fault of anyone's, it's just that meetings can occur typically during the evenings or at night, when it may be hard for a single parent, for example, to get out of the house. What this stipend would do is be able to give a small amount of money for each meeting that our volunteers attend, and allow them to use that if they needed to, for example, pay a babysitter. I know that's just not the only example, but one that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. It lets us get more community voices involved in the conversation and the various committees and boards that we have throughout Essex. And a more diverse representation is something that is incredibly important to the whole of the select board and the town staff. We also have some planned increases in operating transfers to capital. It's going to support updated replacement schedules for some of our large pieces of equipment. So the FY22 budget. The total proposed budget comes in under $16 million, it's 15.97. This is an increase over our last year's budget. I actually think that should say FY 2021, apologies, of 0.51 million. And that's a percentage budget increase of 3.9%. Estimated increase in the tax levy is 1.8%. Bearing in mind as well, I did mention it earlier, that last year we kept a flat tax rate. There was no increase to that. So this is something that we're looking over, really an increase for the first time in 2 years. Where does that increase come from? Well, the majority of the increases is in operations. Our regular personnel costs, including benefits, so health insurance, various other benefits, and pay increases, totals about totals $151,881. Our village stormwater and highway costs are $205,369. New positions, as we talked about earlier, $93,156. We're estimating that the racial equity work and the volunteer stipends are going to be $32,250. We don't necessarily anticipate that everyone who chooses to volunteer their time is going to take those stipends, but it's something that we want to make sure is available. Paving and stormwater construction continues, obviously, throughout both the town and the village, $39,860. Appropriations, so payments that we make to Green Mountain Transit, county taxes, etc., $14,650. Transfer to capital purchases, $26,000. Cost of building maintenance, $39,500. And net of other various increases and decreases, really too minor to list all here, comes to $8,673. And that gives us our total increase. When we talk about salaries and benefits, we just always like to be as transparent as possible. So here we're looking at the total salaries change from our last fiscal year to this one. $193,545. That's a 3.1% increase. Most of that is due to raises and step increases, but some of that is driven by the new positions that we talked about. The police department personnel budget has been funded at 97%. So there was a small decrease in the amount of police officers, or the slots that were available to hire police officers, because we did have vacancies in those positions. So it was funded slightly less than 100%. benefits change, again, health insurance, various other benefit programs that are available to our employees. $51,492, and that was a 1.9% increase over last year. The 2021 rates came in lower than anticipated, so our 22 budget was adjusted to use the lower actual rates as a starting point, and it also includes one new position that has benefits associated with it. The proposed staffing changes, going into a little bit more detail about that. First is our full-time assistant manager. She has been hired, and Evan, you can correct me. I believe she has already started, hasn't she? Or she will be starting very, very soon, if not.
Started this week.
Great. That's
And
going to be the one
if I
full-time
can
position.
add, there used to be money in the budget for a program manager. We changed it to a full-time position. That's why the money balances is not as high as it could have been. So
Great.
that's why it's a half a FTE. The full and a half is the assistant manager and the part-time economic, but full-time, the funding for the full-time assistant manager had some funding in the budget previously.
Great. Thanks, Evan. And the halftime position is the economic development, which again has been one of our big priorities. It's a position that was created out of a former full-time position. So it's actually sort of stepping down in one aspect, but it is covering that critical need that we have to hopefully maintain and diversify the amount of communication that we have between the businesses in our town and the town staff. So total change and total cost, as I've gone over below. And here we talk about the estimated tax impact. The town general tax, the FY21 rate, which did not change from FY20 because of the freeze that was put into place there, 0.5067. And the FY22 estimated rate is going to be 0.5264 for a 3.9% change. Now, this upper portion is for the town inside the village property. To be clear, this has to do with that rolling stock and the town highway tax that we talked about before. This is where, because the budgets were able to align in a certain way, we were able to transfer the village's trucks, the equipment that they have, and move those into the town's budget. So the elimination of the highway tax, as you can see in the TOV property below, means that those town outside the village properties will see a slightly less increase, but it does mean that the village will not be needing to pay solo for their rolling stock anymore. It gets folded into the budget for all of our various public works services. TOV property, 0.5067, same with that base rate. And then the FY22 change, 0.5264. That is a total for the TOV of 1.7% and a dollar amount per year. Town inside the village, $55.16. And for the town outside the village property, $24.36. Actually, I think I may have already covered most of this. So just to be sure, though, I do think we talked about the highway tax, but the assumptions that we use to get these numbers, we're using an average residence value of $280,000. Our grand list growth is going to be estimated at 1.25%. So if it grows larger than that, then we may see less. And then the use of $409,000 $500 from what's called, our fund balance. That's money that, for whatever reason, did not get spent in previous years that we are giving back to the taxpayer to reduce their property tax bill. And here we see the pie chart of what your tax dollars get you. The largest chunk comes in public safety. Yes, please, Megan.
Well, I'm giving you the 5 minutes. That's all.
Oh, sorry, my mistake. I thought you were raising your hand to ask a question. Public safety is the largest chunk. Police and fire services. Public works comes in just a little bit under that. Our general government, our managers, economic development, finance, clerk, etc. And then we have our culture and recreation, parks department. The others are stormwater, county and regional money that we give, our debt services, health and human services, and finally capital. And the total estimated taxes, $1,530 on that average home, and the tax rate of 0.5464, which includes the capital tax, which is paid by all Essex residents. And that is that. I will stop sharing my screen, and if we happen to have any questions, Evan and I are more than happy to tackle them.
Well, we don't have any questions from the callers yet that I see. Do you have a couple of viewers on YouTube? A reminder to folks, you have about 3 minutes to call 802-862-3966. I'm wondering if you can just talk about how this process is different this year without the residents being able to weigh in at a public town meeting. What's that going to look like? Usually the budget is a big discussion and there are floor amendments.
It is, and we had a vote in November, placed on the ballot the question of whether or not we should move to Australian ballot for voting. Quite simply, as a community of 21,000 people, and I mentioned the second largest in Vermont, it's just, while I think all of us really appreciate the small townness maybe of doing town meeting day, realistically having 200 or 300 people decide on a budget is just not appropriate for our community anymore. Being able to give an informational meeting and presentation, which is what we are going to be doing instead, it's going to be able to be attended online. We'll try to do what we can to give access to people. They can contact our town offices if they have questions, or if they don't have an internet connection. We'll see what we can do to get them set up with devices or temporary internet so they can participate in that process. But it is going to be a voting thing now rather than the old school town meeting.
And have you seen a difference in community participation in the budget making process so far?
Yeah. Go ahead, Evan.
I think so. We've had the budget in front of the board a couple of times, and then we've had 2 budget hearings. I think they've averaged over 20, 25 people each night. We've gotten some very good questions and some very good participation.
Fantastic. And so just in that last minute, let's have a reminder to folks. So March 2nd is voting day. And let's have a reminder to folks about the informational meeting that's going to be taking place on Monday. And that's going to be online.
Yep, we'll have an informational meeting online. And then we are, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be mailing out ballots to all active voters. If you're not on the active voter list, a new resident to Essex, you can contact our town clerk and they'll make sure to get you on the list and have a ballot sent out to you by mail. Voting will also be open and available that day for those who don't want to mail in their ballots. Village residents can go to Essex High School, and the town outside the village votes at Essex Middle School.
And Megan, maybe if I could just add, I mean, this is COVID related. The governor and the Secretary of State have not wanted communities to meet in person. So therefore, we're doing the virtual informational meeting. And while voting is still in person, we did the national election in November, and we try to keep it as safe as possible. We keep people spaced out and that. And so we really would appreciate people's patience. If you can vote and vote early or vote by mail, that would be preferred. But if you do want to show up in person, please be mindful of that our COVID restrictions may take a little bit longer and have some spacing, but it is available to you at the places that Pat mentioned.
Great. Well, thank you all. Thank you, viewers, for watching either live or in this repeat viewing. Evan Teach, Unified Manager for the Village of Essex and Essex Junction and the Town of Essex. Patrick Murray, Essex Select Board. A reminder for folks that on February 11th, right now, we have the Select Board Candidates Forums. That will be happening at 5:30 and tentatively at 6:15. There are 2 seats that are up, a 3-year term and a 1-year term. And then don't forget on March 2nd to tune in to full results coverage for Chittenden County at 7 o'clock here on Town Meeting TV, Comcast 1087, BT Channel 17, and here on your YouTube channel. So thank you all for watching, and thank you all for joining us and sharing the budget presentation.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Town Meeting TV. Be well.